Hello everyone, I'm Ana Cecilia Margarita Caria, a registered nurse and your nurse educator for this orientation session on IV cannulation. Today we will cover essential concept, techniques, and best practices for intravenous cannulation. The general objective is to equip newly hired nurses with the knowledge, skills, and attitudes necessary to safely and effectively perform intravenous cannulation. Specific objectives to identify and list the different types of IV catheters and their specific uses in clinical practice, to describe the key steps of the IV cannulation process, including preparation, insertion, aftercare, and proper documentation of the procedure, to perform IV cannulation procedure confidently, demonstrating appropriate aseptic no-touch technique, to differentiate between various IV insertion sites and assess the factors that influence site selection, and lastly, to assess the effectiveness of various IV access methods in different patients. What are the importance and indication of IV cannulation? First, immediate access to the circulatory system. IV cannulation allows for rapid access to the bloodstream, which is essential in emergency situations where time is of the essence. Second, efficient administration of medications. Many medications require IV administrations for quick absorption and effect, especially in acute care settings. This method is particularly important for drugs that are irritating to tissue or require precise dosing. Third, fluid and electrolyte management. IV cannulation facilitates administration of fluids and electrolytes, which is vital for patients who are dehydrated or unable to take oral fluids. Fourth, for blood product transfusion. It is essential for the safe transfusion of blood products, ensuring that patients receive necessary components like red blood cells or plasma quickly and effectively. And nutritional support. For patients who cannot consume food orally, IV cannulation allows for total parenteral nutrition, providing essential nutrients directly into the bloodstream. And last, diagnostic procedures. It is also indicated for the administration of contrast agents during imaging studies such as CT or MRI scans. What are the contraindications of IV cannulation? First is bleeding disorder. Patients with bleeding disorders may be at higher risk for complications. Then local infection. Avoid cannulation in areas with signs of infection as this can exacerbate the condition. Third, burns or compromised skin. Inserting cannula into burned or otherwise damaged skin can lead to further complication. And previous lymphatic nodule clearance. This may affect lymphatic drainage and increase the risk of complication. Fifth is arteriovenous fistula formation. Avoid using the same limb where the fistula has been created for dialysis. And sixth, deep vein thrombosis. Cannulation should be avoided in the affected limb to prevent further complication. Intravenous cannulation involves selecting the right vein for effective access. Consider your patient's condition and restrictions when selecting the appropriate cannulation site. Veins of the upper extremities. Cephalic vein. It is located on the lateral aspect of the forearm, and it is often easily visible and accessible. It is suitable for larger cannulas and is less likely to collapse. Basilic vein is found on the forearm. This vein is larger but can be more challenging to cannulate due to its tendency to roll and its deeper location. Then median vein. These veins can vary in number and position but are generally located in the antecubital fossa and are preferred for their size and accessibility. In the antecubital fossa, this area contains several large veins, including the median cubital vein, which is often the first choice for emergency situations due to its size and stability. The cephalic and basilic veins are also present in this region. Dorsal hand veins, the veins on the dorsum part of the hand, can be used especially in pediatric patients or when forearm veins are not visible. These veins are generally smaller and may be more prone to complications. Foot veins. In cases where upper limbs is difficult, veins in the foot such as great saphenous vein can be utilized, although this is less common and may be associated with higher complication. Here are different cannula sizes and their indications. 14 and 16 gauge are used for trauma or rapid transfusion. 18 gauge is commonly used for surgery and blood products. 20 gauge is standard for most adult therapy, and 22 to 24 gauge are ideal for pediatric or elderly patients. Let's talk about preparation. First, you have to review patients' electronic health records. Check for any known allergies, especially to latex, antiseptics, or medications that may be administered via IV. Review any relevant medical conditions such as bleeding disorders, vascular diseases, or previous complications with IV access. Review current medications and look for any anticoagulants or other medications that might affect bleeding or vascular stability. Also note for any history of difficult IV access or previous sites that may be compromised. Check recent lab results related to hydration status, electrolyte levels, and coagulation profiles. Also confirm the patient's identity and ensure that the EHR matches their demographic information, and verify the informed consent for the procedure has been obtained and documented. Also, it's important to review the overall care plan to understand the purpose of IV access, including specific medications or treatment to be administered, and check recent vital signs to assess the patient's stability and any potential complications. After that, gather all equipment needed, perform hand hygiene, and don gloves. Then, select the appropriate catheter size based on the patient assessment. As part of our lecture today, we will be watching a video that demonstrates the step-by-step procedure for IV cannulation.
Hi there, I'm Andrew, one of the final year medical students. Could I confirm your name and date of birth, please?
Sure, it's James, 13th of December 1989.
Nice to meet you, James. Today I've been asked to insert a cannula into your arm. It's a small plastic tube that will allow us to give fluids and medication. It might be a bit uncomfortable, but it won't be painful. Is that okay?
Yes, it is.
Brilliant. Are you allergic to anything at all?
No.
Fantastic. I'll just gather my equipment and then we'll begin. If you could just lift your arms up for me, James. Okay, James, sharp scratch. James, I'm just going to flush the cannula now. Do let me know if there's any pain. Thank you, James. We're all done. Are you feeling okay?
Yes, I am.
Brilliant, thank you.
Now we are done with the step-by-step IV insertion, and post-procedure, you have to ensure proper disposal of sharps and contaminated materials as per hospital policy. Next is documentation. You need to document the date and time cannulation was performed, gauge of IV cannula used, location of the access vein, condition of the extremity and IV site, use of local anesthetics if applicable, number of attempts made for successful cannulation, description of insertion site, patient's response to the procedure and any health teachings provided, and also indicate whether a saline lock was established or fluids were infused, type of fluids, and rate of infusion. Also note the status and patency of IV system according to hospital policy. Then, post-procedure, you have to continuously monitor your patient for any complication. So these are the common complications of IV cannulation. First is phlebitis. This is the inflammation of the vein which can occur due to chemical, mechanical, or bacterial factors. Signs include pain, tenderness, warmth, and redness at the insertion site. This is the most frequent reported complication. For management, elevation of the affected area, warm compress, compression, and pain relief. You have to refer your patient to the healthcare provider. Next is infiltration. This occurs when IV fluid or medications leak into the surrounding tissue instead of remaining in the vein. Symptoms include swelling, discomfort, and coolness of the skin around the site. Then extravasation. This complication occurs when the IV catheter moves out of the vein, which can happen due to patient movement or improper securing of the catheter. The management for infiltration and extravasation are stop the infusion, discontinue the IV tubing, then aspirate residual drug, and notify the healthcare provider. Next is occlusion. This refers to the blockage of the IV line which can prevent the flow of fluids or medications. You just have to inspect the tubing for kinks or visible obstruction. Then dislodgement. This complication occurs when the IV catheter moves out of the vein, which can happen due to the patient movement or improper securing of the catheter. So you have to remove immediately and restart the IV infusion at a new site if necessary. Then infection. This can be local or systemic. This can occur due to poor aseptic technique. For the management, you have to stop the infusion immediately and notify the prescriber. Remove the IV catheter and culture the tip if catheter-related bloodstream infection is suspected. Then the last one is hypersensitivity reaction. Some patients may experience allergic reactions to medications administered via IV. For the management, discontinue infusion immediately and notify the healthcare provider. Administer appropriate medication and monitor patients' vital signs. Document all your observations, management done, and your patient's status. Remember, if it is not documented, it did not happen. As we wrap up our session, I hope this lecture has provided you with a clear understanding of IV cannulation techniques, their indications, and the importance of maintaining patient safety throughout the process. Remember that practice and adherence to best practices are key to mastering this essential skill. Thank you for your attention, and I look forward to seeing you apply this knowledge in your clinical practice. Goodbye.